Good morning. Welcome back to A Life Worth Living. I'm Frederick Groth, and I believe God has a plan and purpose for you and everyone else. And I have a message of hope and truth to show you a life worth living. So, Numbers chapter 2. Now, we've talked about the fact that there are patterns that will help us to succeed. There are systems that we can apply. Well, guess what? Excuse me. Here's one of them. Numbers chapter 2. It would be good for you to actually read this chapter, but there's a quick overview. God sets up sections and standards for Israel for when they travel, when they move, when they go into war, when they're on the trot, if you will, as they're on their journey and wherever they go. And it wasn't 12 standards, and it wasn't 12 sections, as there were 12 tribes of Israel. Rather, there are a total of 5. Now, he set up 4 standards, and the 5th one was actually the tribe of Levi, the tabernacle. So, here's how it would go. Judah would go first, and a number of tribes would go with him. Reuben would go second, and a number of tribes would go with him. Third, the tabernacle and the Levites would go. Fourth, Ephraim would go, and a couple tribes with him. And finally, Dan would go, and some tribes with him. That was the pattern of movement for Israel. Now, what has this got to do with your life and my life? Well, see, everything that is in the Bible, everything that we talk about, has many applications. Hebrew, the Lord's language, is written in a very interesting way in that everything is applicable. Everything has a lesson. Everything has a principle embedded in it. And so I really want to look at each section here. 5 sections. What's interesting is the meaning of the names. Okay? That's where the principles come into play. Judah, it means to have praise and confession. Reuben is the vision of the firstborn. The third is the presence of God, the holy things. The fourth, Ephraim, means fruitfulness, or to increase or to grow. And then finally, Dan is judgment. So now we are getting into principles. We start out with praise and confession, and we end with judgment. See, a lot of people in their journeys, they start out with judgment, and they wonder why they never get any praise. Because we've got it backwards. There is a pattern that God has in place for us to understand how life really works. As Rabbi Lapin would say, praise, then judgment. But what else is in between? We have a vision, we have the presence of God, and we have growth and increase. See, there is a pattern here. When we live our life with an attitude of gratitude, when we live our life with praise and thanksgiving, it will help us to accomplish the vision that we have, the goal that is set out, and it will allow the presence of God to be right in the middle of it all, and that will bring growth and increase and fruitfulness into our life. And then anything that opposes the above 4 things can then be properly judged. Now that's a pattern to live by. That is an amazing pattern. When we start with praise and end with judgment, it lets us keep the vision, allows God's presence in our midst, and helps us to be fruitful and increase as we ought to. See, there's always a pattern that works best. There are many patterns in life. There are many patterns that we can follow, but there is always a pattern that works best. Any quilter will tell you There are certain patterns that are better than others. Any seamstress will tell you there are certain patterns that are better than others. And this is God's pattern for success, God's pattern for victory, God's pattern for getting through life with the most out of it. And I'll end with it one more time. Start with praise and confession, and that'll allow the vision, the goal that we have to properly resonate with us. It'll allow us to get the presence of God in the middle of us, and which will allow us to have growth and increase. And then anything that needs to be fixed and worked on can be properly judged with righteousness and virtue. When we get the pattern all mixed up, life gets mixed up. So now it's your turn. Get this pattern in your mind, rewind, write it down, and start living that pattern. Get up. Go live a life worth living. God bless you. Have an amazing day.